And one of the big things my business law professor always told me is they said, listen, don't ever let a good crisis go to waste. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome to this week's episode of Life of a CISO with yours truly, the one and only Dr. Eric Cole. It's always a pleasure to be here. If you haven't picked up your copy of Cyber Crisis, make sure you do that. Give them away. They make great holiday gifts for birthdays, anniversaries, right? We want to get the message out there because guess what? We are in the midst of a cyber crisis. And this is one of those things where you sometimes know that you're going to be right, and you wish deep down inside that you're going to be wrong, right? So when I started writing this book, typically when you look at the life cycle of a book, you write it over a year prior to the publication because there's about 9 months worth of work for getting it in what it needs to do. So it looks like this wonderful, magical book, right? With all these great words on it. So there's a lot of work that has to go into it. So it's one of those things that you tend to write it about a year prior. And one of the things I was predicting, even in the midst of COVID, and to me, COVID actually confirmed and helped support that this was going to happen. But by mid 2021, we were going to be in the midst of a cyber crisis. That finally, the country, the world, businesses, and individuals were going to wake up that cybersecurity is the number one threat facing them and that we have been ignoring the problem for too long and we must take immediate action because it impacts everyone. And I know over a year ago that was sort of a strong statement to make, but then we saw that happen in May where we're seeing almost every week a major, massive breach that's impacting individuals' lives. And it's funny because as we were getting ready for my book to come out on June 1st, we're getting into May. And I started just talking to some of my friends and folks and others going, it would be nice if there was a lot more visibility on how bad the problem is. Because I knew how bad it was. I knew that critical infrastructure had vulnerabilities directly connected to the internet. I knew that critical components of our production with processing was vulnerable and exposed, but I felt like that information wasn't publicly known and accepted. Not that I ever encourage or want attacks in any way, shape, or form, but I knew that it was inevitable to happen. So it was one that I was sort of like, it would be really nice if a couple of these breaches became public and got some visibility and got some exposure. Be careful of what you ask for, right? Because mid-May, right, we started off with Colonial and then have had a series of major breaches. And it's so funny because I was sort of saying that our critical infrastructure is at risk. I actually cited that pipeline is probably one of the first areas they're going to hit because it will get attention, visibility, and it's fairly exposed. So on that Friday evening into Saturday, when Colonial Pipeline announced that they were hit with ransomware and had to shut down the entire pipeline, I kid you not, Saturday morning, my phone lit up. I probably got over 30 text messages from various people like, dude, did you actually hack Colonial to promote your book? I'm like, yeah, because that's what I'm going to do, right? Break multiple federal laws to push my book, right? People, of course, were joking because I kept saying it's happening, it's going to become public, and it would be nice if we had a major breach within 10 to 15 days of my book being released. And then sure enough, we had multiple of ones, which basically shows you that my predictions were spot on, the timing was spot on, and we are absolutely, whether we like it or not, in the middle of a cyber crisis. So now the question is, so now what do we do? What is the road ahead? What are the avenues that a chief information security officer needs to be aware of? Now, to me, if you're a current CISO or a deputy CISO or want to be a future CISO, we have a very unique opportunity where the executives at your company are not only very concerned, but they're in listening mode. Don't blow it. Right? One of the things they always taught me, I minored in business in college. And one of the big things my business law professor always told me is they said, listen, don't ever let a good crisis go to waste, right? Always use it for marketing. Always use it because you have a listening public that will actually want to hear what the solutions are out there. And to me, Colonial specifically was very, very significant because it was what I call the Enron moment for cybersecurity. And what I mean by that is this. Before Enron, we knew that publicly traded companies weren't necessarily following the rules, right? They were doing some shady things, right? Cooking the books with extra butter, right, on there and stuff. But nobody really had super strong proof. And then when Enron broke and it directly impacted people's lives, people lost savings, people lost tons of money, people lost their job. It was a significant enough impact on a group of people that Congress basically said, we're going to go in and implement regulation. We're now going to regulate because you proved that you can't be good boys and girls, and we're going to have to step in and start making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to. And key regulation was put into place on publicly traded companies. To me, that was Colonial. Colonial is the trigger point where I now believe in the next several months, we're going to see significant regulation occur in critical infrastructure and really in cybersecurity across any company that's incorporated within the United States. And I always get some pushback going, but Eric, this isn't the first big attack. We've had SolarWinds, we had Marriott, and we had a ton of others in between. What makes this different? Well, let's just be honest with each other. Just want to take a quick break. I hope you're enjoying the show. I have this free webinar that I would love for you to check out if you want to become a world-class CISO. SolarWinds didn't really directly impact your life. I mean, is there anybody listening where it actually directly impacted your life, your family's life, your neighbor's life? I mean, direct impact where it actually caused you to change or alter your actions and how you behave? No. Well, I mean, we could even say that with the Marriott breach where you had 500 million records where people's personal data was stolen. Once again, there wasn't a direct impact. Yes, there was some long-term impact on identity theft, financial fraud, and those things, but sort of direct impact on your current day-to-day life right after it happened, we could say no. However, with Colonial, if you live on the East Coast, but even I know some of our friends in the Midwest, they also were impacted by it. How many of you Monday night was waiting 20, 30 minutes to get gas, right? Many people. How many people on Tuesday and Wednesday, if you didn't watch the news, weren't able to get gas? I know in Northern Virginia, most of our gas stations were shut down. They were completely out of gas for 5 days. I know people had to cancel vacations because they're like, we can't drive and run out of gas. We don't know if we're going to be able to get gas on the way to Florida. And I know people canceled vacations. I know college students weren't able to come home because they weren't able to get the gas. I mean, it directly impacted people's lives. To me, this was the first cyber attack that actually had that real impact on the day-to-day lives of non-technical folks, where everyone started saying, wait a second, this is a big problem. So we have a unique opportunity as chief information security officers to really go in and make the message very, very clear no matter what industry you're in. We are a target. Cybersecurity is the number one threat facing our business. And cybersecurity is our responsibility. The entire executive team is responsible for implementing effective cybersecurity. So that's the first thing, is make sure they're crystal clear. This wasn't an anomaly. This wasn't something that just happened to one organization. Many organizations, potentially, including yours, have similar or the same vulnerabilities that are in place at Colonial that caused the major breach to happen. The next area you want to go in and focus on is what is needed to properly protect and secure your organization. What are the big exposure points? Now remember, one of the messages you want to get across to the executives is that security and functionality have an inverse relationship. 100% security equals zero functionality. So the only possible way you could be 100% secure and guarantee without a shadow of a doubt that you're not going to be compromised is, as I jokingly say, become Amish. Right? Give up computers, give up technology, horse and buggies and candles. Last time I checked, it's really, really difficult over the internet to hack a horse and buggy or a candle, right? So the point that we need to make sure they recognize, every company is vulnerable. Every company has exposures. And if we're not seeing attacks and we're not seeing the compromises, it's not because it's not happening. It's because we're not looking in the right spot. Before COVID hit in January of 2020, right before the world ended, right? All the crazy stuff. I was over in Saudi Arabia, and I was giving a keynote at a conference, and it was at 1 p.m. Now, if you've ever gone over to Saudi Arabia, I'm not sure why, but all the flights from Saudi back to the United States are at 1 a.m. All the connections, all the flights, they're all 12:30 a.m., 1 a.m. I don't know why that's the case, but it is. So you pretty much have the whole day to spend before your flight. So I decided to sit in the conference a little bit. It was a large international cybersecurity conference. So I'm sitting there after my keynote, and there's a panel discussion. So they kick it off and they say, can each panelist please introduce themselves and give a little background? So the first panelist gets up there and they proceed to explain what they do and their company. And they're like, we work for a global Fortune 100 entity. And I'm proud to say we've had 0 attacks and 0 compromises over the last 2 years. And it's like the person was almost doing this like a hero thing. And it's almost like the audience wanted to, woo, yeah, yeah. Like all this, yeah, like encouragement going on. And then the next panelist gets up there and their sort of head is down and they're a little timid. Oh. And they explain what they do. And they say they also work for a global Fortune 100 company, but they've had 3 breaches in the last 12 months. And they almost act like, they're ashamed, like the audience is quiet. You almost want to hear people boo. Right? And I'm watching this from the back of the room. And I'm just looking around like, is this really happening? Because I got to be honest with you. It was the most galactically stupidest thing I have ever seen. I'm like, really? This is how we're responding? Because let me explain. If you're saying that you are a global 100 company and you've had no attacks and no breaches over the last 2 years, you should be fired on the spot for gross negligence, because that is not true. Every other company is being attacked. Every other company has issues. And remember, if you have functionality, you can't have 100% security. It's like the law of gravity. If you have a functional system, every time you add functionality, you're decreasing security. Every time you add functionality, you're increasing your risk. So if you have a highly functional network, which they did, you're going to have vulnerabilities and get attacked. So the fact that they would make that statement is absurd. And then that person that actually detected attacks, it turns out they detected those 3 attacks within an hour and controlled the damage. There was no major impact. You never heard about them on the news. Those are the heroes. But we have this weird thing still going on in cyber that saying you have breaches is like a bad thing. It's like a negative thing. No, it's a reality thing, right? It's like going in and being ashamed that if I jump off a roof, I'm going to fall to the ground. I'm ashamed that gravity is at play. No, it is a law. Whether you like it or not, whether you accept it or not, whether you ignore it or not, gravity is a law that impacts every aspect of your life. And we need to understand, just like the law of gravity, the law of cybersecurity is the same. Whenever you add functionality, you decrease security. So if you have a highly functional network, whether you like it or not, you're not going to be 100% secure. So we need to shift our focus on security from prevention to timely detection. Right? Cybersecurity is not what many people think. The goal of cybersecurity that I see a lot of companies today still have in play, which is we want to prevent and stop all attacks. Nice. That's like saying, I want to jump off roofs and I want to fly. I want to float in the air, right? It's not going to happen, right? So that is not the proper goal. The goal of security is timely detection of attacks and controlling the damage. So the next thing you need to do as a world-class CISO is make sure you have that perspective shift. Make sure your executives recognize that attacks are going to happen, but our goal is timely detection and controlling the damage. That's how we win this game called cybersecurity. Because I know a lot of folks focus in after these breaches. Oh, how did it happen so we could prevent it? That is okay. But the real question is this: how come they didn't detect it within a couple of hours? It's going to come out. Trust me. It's going to come out with Colonial that they were compromised for close to a year. Because I'll tell you right now, the damage and the way they responded is not something that happens in a day. This was a longer-term attack where the adversary was in the network and it was well planned when they executed that ransomware. So the real question we should be asking when we see all these breaches is not just, how do we prevent it? That's okay. That's an okay question. The amazing question is, what could they have done differently, or we can do differently to detect it within hours and days instead of months and years? Because let's face it, if somebody breaks into one system and you detect it within an hour and you contain it, that's a minor attack and no one's ever going to hear about it. But if you let that person break into one of your control systems and you don't detect it for 6, 9, or 12 months, and it can spread and infiltrate every system, then when they execute the ransomware, boom, it could hit everything very fast and very quick. So our goal needs to be, what do we need to do in our organization to have better visibility? What do we need to do in our organization to be able to better detect attacks within a timely manner? How can we get better visibility to contain and control and minimize the damage? Because guess what? Attacks are going to occur. And one of the other things as a CISO that you need to do, so the first thing is just a general education that cybersecurity is the number one threat to our business and that we are a target. It's not an anomaly. Most people think of cybersecurity like they do accidents, illnesses, and robberies. Those are things that happen to other people. No. It's going to happen to you. So that's the first thing a CISO needs to take advantage of, is make sure that's crystal clear. This can, and this will, and this might even be happening to us right now as we speak. Second, shift the conversation. It's not about if it's going to happen, but when. It needs to be from prevention to detection. It needs to be from, we're not 100% secure, and we never will be. And here's what we need to do to have better visibility and detection. And then the third thing is we need to start putting together a clear metric. If we look at information technology and a chief information officer, one of the reasons why that's considered a very mature area is they have a good, clear metric that they measure success. If you've been a CIO or you know any CIOs, ask what is the metric that's used to measure how well you're doing your job. And without a beat, most of them will say 5 nines. Right? Most IT departments and CIOs have to deliver 99.999% uptime availability. It's clear, it's measurable, it's easy, everyone executes against it. All right, so that's something we need to do a better job. Here's the problem. We do have a metric in cybersecurity, but it's an awful metric. What is the metric that almost every organization uses to measure how effective their security and or chief information security officer is? Simple. If we don't have a breach, the CISO's doing their job. You might go, Eric, that's not what well, yes, it is. When a breach happens, what do most organizations do? Fire the CISO. If that doesn't tell you what the metric is, then I don't know what does. Right? That's a pretty darn clear metric. Now, here's the problem. Whether you realize it or not, whether you like it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, if your metric is my success is based on us not having a breach, and it's guaranteed you're going to have a breach, essentially, many CISOs are diagnosed with a terminal illness, right? You basically know you're going to get fired. As soon as a breach is discovered, you're going to get fired, and it might be a week, a month, a year, but it is guaranteed to happen. That's not a good position to be in. So we need to start changing the metric. Now, yes, there's lots of advanced metrics that, depending on the state of your organization, I would love for you to go in and track dwell time and lateral movement. That's an ideal metric. Basically, how long does it take you to detect an attack and how much damage do they cause before you detect it? And those numbers should go down over time. Like, those are amazing metrics. Here's the problem. Most clients can't track those today because they don't have the visibility. They don't have enough detection in place to do that. So I don't want you to wait 12 months to do that. What I want you to do now, this isn't a perfect metric. I always get people going, Eric, I don't like your metric. It's fine. But here's what you have to remember. It's better than what you're using today. And the metric I want you to start off with is attempted attacks. How many attempted attacks does your organization have on a weekly and monthly basis? And once again, estimate, but here's why it's brilliant. Most execs have no clue how bad and how often they're being attacked. When I talk with a lot of CEOs and I say, how many attempted attacks do you think you have on a weekly basis? 5 or 6. Most of them have 20 to 30,000. If your executives don't think they're a target, they think your current security is perfect, and they think you have 4 or 5 attacks a week, and in reality, you are a target, you don't have perfect prevention, you have vulnerabilities, and you're having 20, 30,000 attacks, do you see the disconnect? Right? That's the problem, my friends. When I get asked, why is this happening? Why has the problem been ignored for so long? Dr. Cole, I did over 47 interviews in 48 hours when Colonial broke. Dr. Cole, how could this problem be so bad that you're not surprised, yet it be ignored? And it's because the executives have false data. And I'm not picking on all of us. Many of us do a good job, but there's some CISOs that haven't done a proper communication. Use this as a learning moment. Use this as a teaching moment. Use this as an opportunity to adapt, adjust, and execute. We must make sure that our executives understand reality. If our executives think this is a small problem and it's a huge problem, if our executives think that we're not a target and we're being targeted all the time, if they think we're being attacked 3 times a week and it's 30,000, and they think that we have 100% security, when it's all about detection, which we're not doing, do you see the problem? Do you see the issue? World-class CISOs fix that. World-class CISOs use any opportunity as an opportunity to take their security to the next level. So as my marketing teacher told me in college, don't ever let a good crisis go to waste. We are in the midst of a cyber crisis. I'm not saying you be the person that cried wolf, but now is the moment that you need to make sure that your executives understand three things. First, we are a target. We will be compromised. That's a guarantee. Second, we cannot prevent all attacks. We need to shift from prevention to detection or augment our prevention with detection. And the third thing that we need to make sure that we do is that we go in and they understand how bad the problem is. We give them the metrics that we are being attacked 30,000 times a week or whatever the real number is. Because remember, the way we win at this game called cybersecurity is timely detection and controlling the damage. And as I wrap up this episode, all I have to say is one thing. May all your breaches be minor.